All right, thank you for staying with Citizen TV. Now, the discussion started even during the break. It's about how the MCAs have performed in their respective positions. And they're all here to speak about this. The Control of Budget, Dr. Margaret Nyakango, is now raising a red flag, seeking to stop what she has termed as unnecessary foreign and local travel. Nairobi County MCAs have flashed 8.9 million on the skies on foreign travel in just 3 months. The Control of Budget noting that the foreign trips were never even approved. Shege, this is your county. Let's start with the performance first. Have MCAs performed according to expectation?
First and foremost is to say that currently, because I sit in the County Assemblies Forum, if you look across board, what was the County Assembly supposed to do in the first year? All of them have passed the CIDPs, all of them have passed the relevant budget documents, and all of them have put the government or the county government in the stead to be able to move. That's the first point. Number two is to understand that parliaments, whether it's national or county, their business is to oversight executive. So as we are looking at inwardly what assemblies have done, the bigger part is to look at what the county government, the executive or the national executive is doing. And that is why if you look at the calendar of the assembly, which really matches what happens in parliament, is that between now, like now in January, we are on recess. We are supposed to be doing representational work with Mwananchi so that in February we come back. The bulk of the government, the business in the assembly is government directed. The executive needs to be bringing the bills so that we pass them and then we're able to execute and check if they're doing the right thing. So that should be in the back of our minds as we're looking at it. So where I sit, all of them now, I think most of the counties will now be going for supplementaries and seeing what needs to be organized where. Number two, so that I don't look like I'm running away from that Nairobi question. 8 million, if you divide it in 3 months, number one, it gives about 2-point-something million. 2-point-something million in a given trip. If you look at the trips, the travel in terms of air flights and whatever, it means maybe about 4 people traveled in the last, like 4 people per month for the last 3 months, like 4, like 12 people. In an assembly of 124, then that's about 10%. So really, if you look at it in the strict sense, I don't think I think there's money very well spent.
The question is the travel necessary?
You see, the directive that came from the head of public service was that the only travel that will be okayed must be necessary in nature. And by the way, we get approvals from Devolution Ministry to travel, which means if there was travel, then it means the people who signed must have been satisfied that the travel was necessary. Having said that, I've not even traveled. I don't think even the members here have traveled. So the few I've mentioned, maybe in their travel, if it passed through the speaker and went also to the Devolution Ministry, it means that it was okayed and it made sense. Okay. Having said that, I also want us to look at it in the mirror that this is what the assemblies have done. That's it. I want to know what has Senate done and what has National Assembly done. Because we are aware that even the bulk of senators were recently somewhere. I think it's Rwanda, like all of them. So was that also necessary? We look at the National Assembly. They've also do their travel. Was that also necessary in that kind of thing? And then we look at the executive. Was that also necessary? All that needs to be balanced so that it doesn't look like, oh, these are the guys who can bash left, right, and center. Yeah. Yet the bigger part, and when we were at break, I was saying this, the budget, the county, let me give Nairobi as a county, as an example. The county government of Nairobi's budget is about 42 billion. The county assembly's budget is 1.3 billion, not even 10%, not even 5%. So of that percentage, the bulk of money we have staff, both local and even in our own wards, and all the running expenses. So the traveling budget of 1.3 billion in Nairobi maybe is about 10 or 12%. Now, the development budget of Nairobi, of the 42 billion, which is by law supposed to be 30%, then we're talking about what? Something about 15 billion. How much have we spent between July and December of the first half of the year of expending that 50? I can tell you from Nairobi is not even 10%. You see? And that is the money that directly needs to go to Mwananchi in terms of development, which they can be able to see, which changes their lives.
Okay.
So I think I am not running away from your question, but I'm just saying the discussion should be wholesome. Yeah. And what should be helping Mwananchi is to understand, are we getting value for money? The MCA or the Assembly is your watchman to ensure that this 15 billion in Nairobi is expended in the right way, is actually dispersed, and you actually see value for it. Okay. Finally, if you look at now, we are looking at bursaries. Because now we're in January. The bulk of the money that is supposed to be raised is for bursaries. Yet at the same time, we also have a huge backlog in terms to environment or garbage collection bills. Do we have that money? National government, when's the last time it disbursed money to the county governments? As for Nairobi, the last time they got money is November. So there was no disbursement for December, there's no disbursement for January. So how are they supposed to operate within, own source revenue and that kind of a thing? Okay. So the discussion should be wholesome, I think.
Boss, have MCAs performed according to expectation in your assessment as an MCA yourself?
I want to say that we as MCAs, we have not performed as per the expectation of the Mwananchi, not because of our wish, but because of what the governors are doing across the counties. The governors. And I wish you could have framed your question, have the governors performed?
The governors are here.
Because literally in terms of matters to do with development, that is purely pegged at the executive, and ours is just to do oversight, legislation, and the representation, which as an individual I'm doing to my best. But Trevor, this cannot be felt when the MCAs are punctured, a lot of intimidation from the governors. The governors are focused more in protecting their kingdom than giving service to Mwananchi. So next time I want to get a question whether the governors have performed and whether devolution is working and whether our people are getting what they should be getting because of this 2010 constitution.
And you don't think that is the case?
And I don't think that is happening. For example, in my county in Kisii, where we have spent only 0.9% in the year 2023-2024, and we are almost in the final quarter. So you can imagine what is happening, and the development budget is 5.6 billion. And literally, we have not spent even a coin. So what has been spent is the current expenditure. And the current expenditure does not benefit the people in the ground. The people need roads, the people need health facilities, the people need, ECD classrooms, and that is not happening.
But one of your roles as an MC is oversight. And how have you been able to pull this off? And when you ask the questions, do you even ask the questions?
So Trevor, I want to tell you, these questions we ask them daily. And we raise them in all the forums that we get airtime to do so, from the assembly committees, from the assembly, from the city, the plenary proceedings, in public barazas. But I want to tell you, and my fellow colleagues who are MCAs can agree, that the weakness or the challenges that we are facing as MCAs is that the superiority that the governors have created for themselves. Most governors do not want to be questioned. I have just said here clearly that most governors are fighting hard to protect their name and kingdom, but they are not fighting hard to serve the people as it is expected.
But when the Auditor General raises questions of MCAs traveling and gobbling millions of funds on unnecessary travel,
Trevor, whatever you see has been spent in terms of traveling is within the budget. When we make a budget in the assembly, there is money meant for the assembly, and there is money meant for the executive, there is money meant for development, and that is done within the law. Like, for example, in Kisii, our budget is 1.3 billion for the assembly. And that money includes traveling expenses, running the assembly, paying our salaries, and we cannot exceed that ceiling as set within the law. So traveling has no issue. As my good friend Chega said, it is always approved by the devolution ministry. So any travel that you see is within the law. And one of the main factors, or one of the main things that we need to do in terms of ensuring that we increase service delivery is capacity building. You cannot do capacity building just around. You must do benchmarking, even if it means international. And that's why you see that money is being spent. It's not misappropriation. The Auditor General should tell us whether the governors are spending money for development. And if they are doing so, how much have they spent?
In the 21st century, do you really need to go somewhere to see something? Benchmarking. Do you really need to go there? You can always find these conversations online. You can have a Zoom link. You can even have, even if it's a train station you want, you will get the blueprint. You don't need to go and see the train moving.
You know, Trevor, that is according to you. That's according to you. All I want you to know, you cannot divert the assembly budget to development. A ceiling is set, and we do that. We cannot exit. We usually, sometimes, we underspend. That is what happens. But see, when we underspend, that is always carried forward in the next budget. You cannot divert that money to development. The pertinent question should be, is the development money being spent by counties? That should be the discussion of the day. And which I can tell you without view of contradiction, it's not being done. You cannot audit travels. We should be auditing development. The Auditor General should now man up and audit development, because that's what you want to hear. Because you literally, as Chega said, the whole Senate was in Rwanda. As an MCA, the only time I've gone out was last year when we went to Uganda. So you can imagine, I've only traveled once, but it is raising a red flag. So the Auditor General should also know what people want to hear.
The moment you point out that the whole Senate was in Rwanda means you also agree that most of this travel is unnecessary.
Most of these travels are being done. You have seen the president always travel out of the country. You have seen ministers travel out of the country. Why the focus on MCAs?
Okay, let me hear what Grace has to say. Grace, is this travel necessary from your view? And also, do you think MCAs are performed according to expectation?
Number one, Trevor, I totally agree. All MCAs have performed according to the expectation, because one of our work is to represent our people. And that's why most of the time we are doing our plenary sessions, we'll be sitting on those committees. The other part, it's oversight. And we've definitely done that as MCAs, which really rubs off the governors really, really wrong when you do the oversight, especially when you're asking about the development on the ward levels. The other part about traveling, Trevor, there are two ways we can look at this. For us to be able to do representation also, because sometimes most of the MCAs, and please, I hope this does not sound wrong, there is a certain of exposure that majority of them do need, especially when you want to pass some certain laws, or you want to pass some certain projects, or you want to go and just view what other countries that are doing better that you can come. Yeah, just basically benchmarking. But now I want to put it very plainly, because sometimes benchmarking looks like you've just gone there and you've just gone to travel and do shopping, and take selfies and all that. It's not necessarily that. And also you have to understand, Trevor, once I went into politics, I understood the Nairobi politics are different from other up-country politics, trust me. And here in Nairobi, it's very easy to say, I can Google, I can do the YouTube, I can do all that and understand how Israel, this is how they do, in Egypt, this is how they do. It's very easy for someone like me who grew up in the city. But then you have to understand that we also have other leaders who got elected just because of they are very good as leaders, but then there's that certain percent of exposure that is required to be able to understand, okay, this is pretty much necessary for this leader to do the benchmarking. But aside from that, personally, I've not even traveled.
Imagine. Okay.
Yeah, personally, I've not even traveled. So it depends also on the level of priorities as a county. When it comes down to the traveling and budgeting.
Okay.
And also it's important for myself to, and also Kenyans to understand, we do not just go and break the bank. We also have to pass these budgets. And I can tell the year 2022-2023 Machakos, none of our MCAs really did travel. Why? Because, like I said, sometimes it's priorities being set for the county. Yeah. But as
So why didn't they travel? Because the priority was different for the county.
And also their budgets, you understand.
That is exactly what we're trying to say.
Yeah, that's
then it's unnecessary and therefore it doesn't need to be given the allocations. No, or even if it is given allocations, it's minimal.
Yeah, that's the point I'm saying. It's very minimal. So that's I said, you have to be given priority. Like I said, there are certain, like for instance, you might be looking for a certain project that you want to do in our county. But then we can look locally and say we have no other county that we can go and benchmark. Okay. Then we look for another country that maybe this is actually working for them. Can we go and benchmark and see actually how do they do it? And even out of the committee.
Complaining, Grace, is because you see, we were talking about just the same period, 8.9 million for MCAs in Nairobi, but in Nyamira, it is 32 million. So how is this being rationalized? Again, I know you're the one who is sitting at the County Assembly's forum. Before I bring in Emily. The
report must also be accompanied by why it's being called unnecessary or whatever. Because you said the last 3 months. As my colleague was talking about the travel, I remember I was in the delegation with the governor and also the president when they attended the UN General Assembly. And the kind of conversations that were happening in New York about governance and about how Kenya is making strides in terms of the democracy, it's not a matter of Googling. I can assure you. There are things, I mean, I was in a meeting where the president and the governor met the NBA officials. And they had a commitment that NBA, National Basketball Association, will open an office by November. And I tracked. And in November, they actually opened a Nairobi office. It's not that NBA did not want to open an office in the African continent before. But in the last regime, the rapport was not as good. And that's why NBA opened an office in Kigali. And that's why there's a big arena in Kigali on basketball. And that's the discussion that we're having. I mean, just using it as an example. If we end up setting up a big basketball arena around Kasarani, do you know the kind of revenues that is going to create, the kind of removing the kids who are now maybe upping their game in terms of basketball and the corresponding economic activity that follows that. And by the way, that will be a grant by National Basketball Association. Now, being able to be in that situation and seeing, and then going to another meeting, because there were like 3. One, I think I went where the president was talking about climate change and the kind of impact that is there. In that delegation, the head of Equity Bank also was having a very big discussion about financing on climate change and those kinds of things. It's exposure. That's the exposure that she's talking about. If you're in that conversation, then it elevates even your thinking. So that when I come to Nairobi, I stop operating like Angara, you know. Now, if we open that discussion that way, we must look at value. So that if it's Migori 32, to what extent are we talking about? What kind of trips that were there? And all those kinds of things. So let's not just put figures. And by the way, even as you're saying, devolution ministry, for you to be given money to travel, guess what? The controller of budget must approve. He's the one who gives you that money to travel. So was she not satisfied by the time of giving? All right, let me bring in Emily on this. Emily, what is your assessment? Have the MCAs performed well enough? Bring in Kevin. And then this issue of travel, is it really necessary?
Yes, Trevor. I think on the issue on performance of the MCAs, I would actually say that they are trying, although with a lot of difficulty. Because, you know, why I talk about difficulty is because of the limited financial ability. You know, realistically, MCAs in the past terms had a lot of allowances that were being given. First of all, there's been the issue of the plenary allowance, which was withdrawn. And you find that without the plenary allowance, actually, we end up not really having enough quorum for us to be able to perform at time, when there's not really a matter of interest to most of the members. So that has been one of the biggest challenges in the assemblies during our sessions and in our duty on legislation. And secondly, also on financial ability, the autonomy of the county assemblies. You know, we're still fighting for the autonomy of the assemblies, so that we're not able to, so that we're not, we don't really over-rely on the executive, on the governors, for us to be allocated funds. So, you know, because that actually leads to compromise. So we are really fighting for autonomy of the assemblies for us to be able to actually carry out our role, especially on oversight of the executive. And another thing is there was a proposal for Ward Development Fund, which was actually turned down by the Senate, I think some time back. It is just our prayer that if we could actually be allowed to have that, then we'll be able to actually bring development to our people. Because, you know, as MCAs, we're actually more like a door rag. You know, when you talk about a door rag, it's like everyone who wants to come into the house has to step on the door rag. So, you know, being the last linkage of governance at the grassroots level, everyone comes to the MCA. You know, people at the grassroots level don't really understand what the role of the MCA is. Me and you, I know we understand so well. But people at the grassroots level don't really understand. You know, people will come to the MCA with all sorts of problems, even problems that are supposed to be solved by the members of parliament. So that is one challenge that MC is actually going through, in as much as they're trying to deliver. They're trying to deliver as a representative of the people. But that is a challenge because with low financial ability, you're not able to sort out some of those problems that come to you.
Okay.
So I think if we could actually be given some little allowances, then we would actually be able to deliver much better than we are currently.
Okay.
Actually, I still talk about delivery, about service delivery before I go on to the foreign travels. You find that with the high taxation, I still go back to the taxation because it is really affecting the MCAs. You look at the slips, what an MCA actually earns. After all the taxations that we have, whatever you have is so little that you're not able to even survive with all throughout the month. So if actually that can also be considered, then I think we would really be at a better place in order to be able to deliver well. And Trevor, if I go back to the foreign travels, I think I would support the foreign travels for MCAs because we look at the evolution, it's a new thing. You know, Kenya, since the promulgation of the new constitution, it's been just about 10 years. And with the 10 years still, we still need to learn a lot from the other areas that have had this form of governance before.
Yeah.
So you find that whenever we go for the foreign travel, don't just go for foreign travel just to have fun. I think it needs to be regulated and balanced because you find that foreign travel actually helps us also build capacity of members of county assembly. We're able to go out there and learn something new that you can actually come back and implement in our county.
Okay.
So I would really support foreign travels to be brought back because I remember I sit in the Committee of Health as the Vice Chair of Health. And just before the ban on foreign travels, we traveled to Uganda, just across the border. And we really learned a lot because they have a very good cancer center there. You know, in Kisumu currently we're putting up a cancer center at Jaramogi Oginga Teaching and Referral Hospital. And our visit to Mulago National Hospital, we were able to learn a lot because they're putting up actually a very wonderful structure for the cancer center, which was a very good benchmarking for us. And if only we could actually be able to do these visits. I know you talked about YouTube. You know, in YouTube, there's some questions you can't really ask. You don't really have that one-on-one dialogue. So when you go down there, then you're able to actually go into details and find and get more information on how you want to go back and do this.
Okay.
And implement the same project within your area of jurisdiction.
All right. Let me bring in Kevin on this. And you see, the literal sense of what I'm talking about is not just Googling anything. I'm talking about using internet. You can text, you can email people, they can send you blueprints, you can have conversations, you can have meetings. Kevin, have they performed according to expectation as a County Governance Watch perspective?
Trevor, my very straightforward answer is no. And I'm saying this with a lot of with due respect to how our devolution is structured, the relationships between the legislative arm of governance and the executive, that is the office of the governor, and basically the executive and the county assemblies. And I'm also looking at the manner in which MCAs come into office. So how the politics of becoming an MCA is done. Most of our MCAs are struggling in all the Chapter 177, I mean the Chapter 177 of the Constitution that really gives them the mandate. And if you look at, for instance, representation, we look at how are MCAs representing the citizens. a lot of that in the manner in which devolution is structured to be done is not being done. And that borders all the way to public participation, how it is structured, to sectoral committees, who sits in which committee, how effective are these committees to even exercise oversight over not just the governor by virtue of the individual, but indeed by virtue of office, which means even the county executive committee members. Because before you get to the governor, there are directors, there are chief of officers, there are CECs here. Now, I'm taking note of all those relationships, bordering all the way to how legislation is being done. So for the MCAs can say services have not been delivered, but the Constitution gives them the mandate to pass legislations that give effect to the delivery of those services. So if you speak to most governors, they will tell you, I don't have the power. I could have the money, but I don't have the legal mandate. Now, that legal mandate comes from my friends here, because MCAs are given that power to make any proposal that will make the lives of your people better at the county level, at the ward level. So touch it to their foreign travels, which I don't see value in, because the value should be accruing into, yes, you went and so what? Have you brought that railway to our ward? How many years will it take for us to see what you went to see in that country, for us to have it, against the daily struggles of your people? So a lot of our members of county assemblies have not performed as per the expectations of the Constitution and the people. And that is, of course, taking note of very many indicators, including what some of them are saying, which is the inability to have a fund, which they have called Ward Development Fund, which I don't see it seeing light of day, because then issues around conflict of interest. So some of us have proposed something similar to what the women reps have, because you cannot be the person who wants to develop in a ward and exercise oversight. So when monies are misused at the ward level, which you call Ward Development Fund, who will ask those questions? So the MCAs should have organized themselves through CAF to ask for an MCAs Affirmative Action Fund, which then you put it in a committee manner, and then you sit in or stand in as a patron who has very limited engagement. Because when you say a Ward Development Fund, and the Constitution expects you to oversight over service delivery, which is why governors are running from this question around inability to spend both development money on service delivery, because the MCAs are not asking those questions, both at the plenary, and he spoke about it, and also at the committee, the sectoral committee levels. So governors have an excuse, and in some of the meetings which we have had, they even push it further to say, na sasa mbona mnaitisha Ward Development Fund? Because then it's going to be one, conflict of interest, who will oversight the oversighter.
Yeah.
And then two is the question around what will Ward Development Fund do in a ward against money for development by the governor. So yes, it is true that our devolved system of government is growing, but I think out of this growth, Trevor, we should be learning certain lessons. And part of those lessons is not for the MCAs to be agonizing every day. It's supposed to organize themselves to begin to look at how do we make devolution better? Because I don't see any day when devolution will stop working or will stop getting implemented in this country.
Yeah.
It's there in the Constitution, Chapter 11. There are mechanisms through which it's supposed to be operationalized.
Yeah.
Right now, we are talking about questions around fully devolution of functions. Why must it be a question of governors raising that question, while MCAs who are supposed to be looking at service delivery? Because when national government stifles these resources at the national level, it means services, certain functions are not being implemented under here.
Yeah.
Now, that is an oversight role of MCAs, which I don't think there is quite a deliberate conversation taking place around how devolution and the relationship and dialogue, which you were talking about earlier on, should be happening between governors and MCAs. Instead, what we see, Trevor, is the quest for Ward Development Fund is tied on, again, relationships. A governor comes and says, wewe ni mtu wa UDA, mimi ni mtu wa sijui ODM or whatever, so development can't go to your area, which is, of course, unconstitutional. Or the governor comes and says, your people didn't vote for me, so out of the boreholes that I want to build, pesa itakapobaki pengine nitawafikiria. Now, that is a good question to have, but of course it's already discriminatory and it's disenfranchising a number of constituents.
All right.
So the discussion is good, but I think especially for the MCAs, based on their functions, representation, oversight, and legislation, a lot of the questions really need to be answered by the members.
Let me hear what Boss has to say in reaction to what Kevin has just said. What more needs to be done to empower the MCAs? Because according to Kevin, you're slacking.
Thank you, Trevor. One, let me talk about World Development Fund.
Yeah.
I've seen different versions proposing how the World Development Fund is supposed to be manned at the county level. Maybe my good friend Kevin had also read another version about the same. We intend not to oversight what we do, but what we are saying for us to achieve Article 174, Article 175, that talks about the objectives and principles of devolution, we literally need to devolve counties further by ensuring that the basic unit of devolution, which is the ward, that is where the money is spent at. As we talk now, the money is still at the counter at the top. And still, to me, I'm still insisting that the people have not felt the main fruit of the 2010 Constitution, which sired this, devolution. Yeah. So I want to say that MCAs need to be empowered. As we are talking today, in some counties, MCAs are spanner boys of the governor because of the desperation. It's good and keen to know that Kevin has said that the MCAs are suffering. That is the truth. We are suffering, and I know Chege is working hard to ensure that MCAs are more empowered in terms of having what they can manage, just like the members of parliament. There is nothing wrong. We only intend to make devolution work starting at the ward level. We can come up with a law that ensures that if it's about managing the money that has been set aside in terms of World Development Fund, or whatever name that it can be called, even if it means the affirmative, whatever name, so long as these people called MCAs, have something that we can manage, so that as we respect the separation of power between the executive and the counter assembly, we can proceed in terms of having a conversation on how people can benefit. We can ensure that now the governors have respect for MCAs. You know, I've seen in some counties, MCAs are literally personal assistants of governors and their first ladies. And it is a tragedy. It is a tragedy which need to be talked, and this must be brought to an end for this country to move forward.
All right.
Yeah.
Grace? How do you envision this World Development Fund, first of all?
Trevor, to be honest, that's one of the most important aspect of this nation can ever do in terms of devolution. Whatever they want to call it, World Development Fund, affirmative fund, bora huyu mtoto anaitwa devolution akue. That's what we are actually advocating for. Because like I just want to also say, sometimes you find genuinely the MCA, your people really voted for you because they believed in you. But by default, maybe your ward never voted for the governor, or in the differences of the disparities of parties. Now it becomes a point where we have to develop our own MCAs for us to be able to make sure because by the end of this politics, by the end of the coming election, now we're able to garner more seats at the assembly. In some cases, you find where the governor actually decides not to work with you. For instance, you are from this party A, you won, but now their party B, never won. So they start working with the party B, who you actually defeated. So in these cases, you find that by the end of the day, yes, you as an elected member, you are being punished, but people who are being punished more are actually the taxpayers who are actually being punished just by the default of the party they chose to vote or went with. So as we are fighting for this, we can come up with measures that can actually, because by the end of it, no one of here knows what 2027 will be there, or there might be another MCA who will come in place. But what we're actually advocating for is just to make sure the devolution comes to the ward level. The other aspect is that, like what he said, most of the MCAs, you find them now, instead of doing the oversight, now you become like, sometimes you even become the personal assistant of the governor, because you actually have to beg for your people to get the development, to get at the development level. Now, when it comes, it's almost like what we can sit here and MCAs and just keep on saying about the Justice Mother Koome and the President. Those two are separate entities, and we don't want them to sit and have a dialogue. Now, when it comes to the county level, it's the same case. Executive and the assemblies, those are two different arms of the county governance. So when you find that most of the time we say that the county assemblies have gone to bed with the governors, it's exactly the same thing we keep on attacking the national government when you see them doing that. So as MCAs, it comes a level where now we can't do our oversight because we are afraid of the punishment that comes with it from the governor. Yeah. So these are the things that we are actually advocating for. Okay. Yeah.
Let me add this, and I must thank you most sincerely for bringing my colleagues from the counties, so that it just doesn't look like it's a county assembly forum Nairobi issue. And you can hear how they've really dissected Kevin's argument about WDF. Because the issue, and let me disabuse the thinking, and after this, I'm going to have tea with Kevin and school him properly on this WDF.
As always, because we always have tea after having discussions on WDF.
He needs serious capacity building, this affirmative action. Because at the end of the day, he said very well that you do not want a governor to be able to sideline some of the wards. Because in Nairobi, we have 85 wards, half and half. I mean, Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, almost half and half. So there's a governor who can choose, and these are the areas that voted for me, I don't need these other ones. But with some affirmative action of some sort, all the wards are given a similar amount across board. So whether you like him, whether I talk to you, whether I greet you, a certain amount will go to your ward. That's number one. Number two, we do not want that money to be administered by the MCA. It can be at the executive for all we care. But the most important thing is, can the citizens propose the important activities that they want that money to do, and the process be done through the executive, and we'll look at it and oversight. That's what happens. And I'll give an example of my own ward in Ngara. There's an estate that it's called Ngara. Was never painted since it was built, and it was built in the Mukoloni days. It's the first time that I was able to paint it, because that was one of the priority areas. Now we are even putting a road. If you look at that estate and you look at all these mushrooming commercial entities where kids start, when you leave your house, you're in the street, this is a proper gated community that is owned by the county. We want to refurbish it, and it looks like a proper middle-class entity that gives people dignity in where they're going to live. So as far as we are concerned, we don't care what it's going to be called. In fact, we've never wanted it to be, because in Nairobi we have it. But we are not the ones who administer it. It's administered from the executive. So when we now move into getting things done, we now look at it in that way. Number two, Kevin talks about has the MCA performed? He says flatly, no. It must be based on something. Is it representation that we are failing? Is it legislative, or is it oversight? At the representational level, we have ward officers. The ward officers that we are employed for, the amount that you are given to employ one is what? 30,000 inclusive of tax. What is the same amount that is given at the national level, so that the MP has enough resources to be able to apply very good quality people at the ward level? For us, we're able to now, we can't, like for me, I get guys who are young, they're well educated, they have university degrees, but they have to start from somewhere. Are you going to get value for money, or they are there marking time looking for a better job elsewhere? So we must look at what kind of representation are we talking about, and what kind of value. And then more importantly, what are the parameters of checking if we are doing well or not? In terms of legislation, it's easier. You look at the laws that each county assembly has done, vis-a-vis what was brought by the executive, and how are we doing Are we moving forward or are we moving backwards? In terms of oversight, Kisii has very robust, they take the issues, Meru is also another area. The issues that were being fought in Meru, by the way, were about affirmative action funds. Forget about the hula baloos, but the most important thing is the money that was supposed to go to the counties. There are even counties that agree that capital projects might be divided across all the counties. So finally, if CRA had recommended in the last financial year that the counties get 407 billion from the 15% of the national revenue, they proposed for 407, they ended up giving us 385. So do you say Senate failed? Is it that Senate was unable to push for the agenda for the counties? Because Article 96 is very clear on the role of Senate. They should have fought and ensured that it's 407 billion that is going to the counties.
Yeah.
And more importantly, are the disbursement be done on time?
Okay.
I came here and I told you, the counties have received disbursement up to October. November, December, and January, not yet. So how are they supposed to operate? All of them operate using overdrafts from commercial banks. So in terms of, we need to look at it. And it's a good thing that your background is National Treasury. We should have a discussion about National Treasury. It should not be hell-bent and casted in stone in the national government. It should be a separate entity where every shilling that is collected, 15 cents go to the counties, 85 cents go to the national. And we should have a proper, robust conversation about that so that whatever counties are supposed to get, let them get. And then now, Governance Watch and others oversight the money, shilling for shilling, where the monies that we got, did we get value for them or not? Finally, the citizen expectations are also on our case. Grace said it very well. In 2027, whether you performed or not, Mwananchi will tell you no or yes, So at the end of the day, we have a 5-year contract. If I didn't perform, then Mwananchi has the last word, right? And all of us have this oath that we've taken to uphold the Constitution and to work for the Mwananchi. So I want us to be able to have a proper conversation. Let's not just look at what the assemblies are supposed to do. Let's look at devolution in a broader spectrum, and let us see the value that we are getting out of devolution funds, out of the activities, out of the monies that we've been expending.
Okay. Kevin, quick kind of response, because I know it's 4 MCAs against one.
I think Mheshimiwa was not keen. I probably was only looking at what I didn't say right. But I thought I began by picking, one, the context. The political economic context within which the Kenyan devolved governance system is running. So everything I said is based on that context, including the fact that it is governance, because you're saying, for instance, in Nairobi, and most counties have a mechanism to develop their wards. But that resource is not called what we are proposing. And that is partly why it is based in the executive. Because there is no day within our devolved governance system that members of county assemblies will administer or intend to want to oversight resource within their vote. When I say vote, I don't see development money, whether it's affirmative action from the budget of the assembly. That is why governors, in their wisdom, have diversified mechanisms to boost certain development projects within the wards.
It's the CRA that gives us,
because
ceilings.
WDF is illegal. I mean, there's no mechanism.
Same as CDF.
Yeah, so that is wisdom. That is wisdom for us. And you see, for CDF, only does 3 things. Is infrastructure for schools and security.
Now there's environment.
Yeah, now because of climate change and all that. So there is a very thin line within which even CDF for an MP can be utilized or administered. So my request to my colleagues and co-panelists is, let's focus on how to make the life of that citizen better. True. And if we can do that and point it out even to the governors, all this clam around, oh, the governor doesn't like me, oh, the governor doesn't belong to my party, will die, because the citizens will also see it.
Yeah.
But beyond these indicators and parameters that we use, even as County Governance Watch, we go even up to the quorum, basis of no quorum for conversations and discussions in the assembly. And why I say no is because why should there be quorum hitches in almost all county assemblies?
Yeah.
And I don't want to be very bad to my friend. I have attended sittings at, for instance, Nairobi County Assembly, I have never seen him in plenary. I have done that, and I've never seen Mheshimiwa. No, I'm just saying that I don't want to look bad.
Miss 8.
And if we did that for Kisii,
You can't miss 8 consecutive.
What I'm saying is, why should there be quorum hitches if the role
is clear
and the expectation is that you are elected to sit there, and whether the discussion is of your interest or not, that is your office.
Okay,
you know?
boss, you need to respond.
No, I'm just saying quickly that we have a law that guides on how you attend the plenary sittings. You cannot miss 8 consecutive. But that said and undone, a quick one is on this issue about budgeting. The control budget gave an advisory that the counties can make their own legislation as far as ward-based budgeting is concerned. As in Kisii, for example, we have done a 27 million budget for every ward. That we did immediately we joined the assembly. But that is still there is a lot of but that's still Trevor. There is a lot of interference from the executive. The role of the MCAs, which people gives us mandate to do representation. In budgeting process, we are supposed to bring in board what my people, for example, the people of Masimba ward, what they want in terms of priority, so that I put it in the budget. But because of incompetence and these party wrangles from the executive, they always want to scrap off what the MCA has proposed. They do their own proposals that do not serve the people of where the MCA comes from. And this is why we want to say, for us to achieve the fruits of devolution, we must have frequent now audit of how the counties are performing and how service delivery is done and how every coin is spent. Let us not focus how our MCAs have traveled. What is within the budget? Let us focus if we as the people are getting what we're supposed to get from the counties. And as of today, Trevor, I can tell you the counties are dismally performing. And this is a total blame to the executive. Because they are the one who must ensure that the people are getting services. What we propose should and must be implemented. Regardless, if I'm elected in UDA, that is my bus of choice. That is the bus I choose to travel in. It should not bar the people of Masimba or the people of Chieleni or Ngara from getting service if the governor is in ODM. The party nonsense must stop. What we want is people to get the service. And this governor's watch or the devolutionist watch focus more on the executive, not focus on MCAs. Our role is purely on paper. What is on the ground or what must be felt on the ground is what people are getting from the counties. And as today, Trevor, the situation is sad.
Let's bring up a lot of feedback coming through that more than 10 tweets. Let's see if you can read quite a number of them, and then I'll give you all a chance. One minute each for closing remarks. Where do we go from here as MCAs? And I see Osido is under fire there. Samuel Wood says the battle and war between executive and judiciary is not a solution. Talks will do. Let them meet and talk. These are the top most respected people in the nation that need to be emulated by resolving things amicably without shouting to Kenyans, JM says, kindly ask the MCAs how some of them oversight counties like Nairobi and Machakos that spend zero on development in the first quarter of this financial year. We need to call out non-performing governors, but they are busy praising them. So sad. Machakos and Nairobi are here. They will use that for closing remarks. 1 minute to respond. Angela Lazaro says, dialogue over what? Talks between CJ and the president will absolutely have no effect on individual judges' decisions. President should lead Kenyans in upholding court decisions, not trying to arm twist them to bend the law. Samuel, again on the judiciary, says judiciary is an arm of government and like all other arms of government should be called out when they turn rogue. They should be criticized like the executive and legislature. Kufunzi says the performance of many MCAs has been disappointing. Instead of fulfilling their oversight role, most have become loyal lapdogs to the executive. It's time for them to remember their responsibilities to the people. Frank Orinde says MCAs have largely forgotten their cardinal responsibility, which is oversight, and have instead gone to bed with county chiefs in exchange of goodies, travel allowances, and contracts within the county. Samuel again says, we continue to emphasize on the need of members of county assemblies to refrain from issuance of bursaries and focus on their oversight mandate as stipulated in the Constitution. Sir Nixon says, I think one of the reasons why MCAs benchmark a lot outside our country that's full of resources is mainly to get hefty allowances that will replenish their pockets after spending so much during campaigns for general elections, period. Gori Baraza says, a keen look at the roles of an MCA, you can see that their roles are clearly demarcated from legislation, oversight and representation. I want to agree with the lobby groups on their push to have MCAs step aside from bursary issuance. Agumba Steve says, we can give our MCAs a try with the Ward Development Fund and see how they'll manage it. We may underestimate their ability, yet it may be of great impact to the wards. As long as there is accountability, anything is always possible. Shida Mkenya kwa uongozi ni ufisadi. Emily, closing remarks. Going into 2024, what do we need to do now? 1 minute.
At some point, I lost you because we have a blackout. Huh? We had a blackout.
Yeah, so, sorry.
Although I caught up with you and actually I could actually grasp a few points from what my colleagues were discussing, and all I can say is all the issues actually raised actually all trickle down to financial capacity, because you've just read comments from the public. And if you look at the comments of the public, actually, they are talking more on compromise, you know. You talk about compromise of the assemblies and the judiciary at large. And you find most of this actually happened because of corruption. When you talk about corruption is because, you know, when the executive actually wants to cover up something, you know, the first people that approach the legislative arm, which is the assemblies. And you find that the fact that the assemblies are not autonomous, then they're easily compromised, because they actually have to depend on the executive for their funding. So my key point here is we need to have the assemblies independent of the executive.
Okay.
The autonomy of assemblies. That's my key parting shot for this. And in our discussion, I don't know whether, and in our discussion on the Ward Development Fund, it doesn't matter what we call it, because in as much as we're running away from the Ward Development Fund here, but you know we have the CDF, which is actually managed by the members of Parliament. I don't see any difference why the MCAs cannot actually have the Ward Development Fund. Okay. Either if they want to call it the formative fund, there's no problem. But as long as we are able to actually have a fund that would enable us to deliver services to our people at the grassroots level, then I think that would be one way forward. Okay. Otherwise, thank you, Trevor.
All right. Bahati? Closing remarks.
I'll agree with my colleagues. As the county, the governors watch, what they can help us with, and also our people at the background, is to assure that if we can come with policies that can actually mandate all the governors, regardless of how the budget is blown or underspent, every financial year, we can make sure that they can account and show at least, even if it's 40 million Kenya shillings per ward, that projects that they can actually show these are the projects that we did on this ward, and then that will actually help our people to be able to get a devolution way up to the ground.
There was an accusation that MCAs, Nairobi and Machakos, your people have spent zero on development, and you're also very quiet.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we are talking about, because most of the times, and we've seen actually even most of the tweets, what they're actually saying, that most of the MCAs have gone to bed with the executive to a point where, because you are afraid of the repercussions that do come when you do your oversight. Well, let's call a spade and not a big spoon. Actually, most of the MCAs are actually really suffering because of that. Because like what my colleague just said, what our people do want from us. We do all the public participations. Our people do give us the needs that they see, their priorities in the ward level. Us as MCs, we go back into the assembly, of course, do pass the policies, then and the governors give, the executive give us the budget and do pass it. But after that, whatever that happens, the reshuffles of projects, we saw this was more important than this, then it becomes an issue back again to the people that are like, no, this is what we asked for. Why are we not being given what we really needed instead of what the other people on the other side saw fit for us? And that's what some of the things we are asking. Can MCAs be given that freedom of also understanding, or even the governors and the executive to be able to understand that, regardless of the project that they wish to do? Let's say, for instance, in Cheleni ward, yes, the governor was elected. She also has her mandate to see what's fit for her people. But also, as the people, can we be given the opportunity to know that a minimum of either 10 million, 20 million, whatever the amount will be put, it's a mandatory, these projects to be coming from the normal mwananchi and not what we as elected think it's fit for them.
Boss.
Trevor, way forward, let us have the Ward Development Fund. This can be done through an act of parliament. Number two, let us audit the governors frequently on how they are managing their counties. And we should have a law that bars governors from doing imbalanced developments across the wards, and the control budget must and should begin with the county budgets.
Okay.
There is a lot of mutilation in what we pass in the assembly and what is applied to the control of budget. So this is a red flag. For example, I come from Kisii, so I want to be on record that this has happened before. And I know it is a matter that is being investigated by the ESCC, by the control budget, but that calls for the control budget to be keen on what assemblies pass and what is uploaded for them for approval. Okay. There is a lot of mutilation, and as you know, that is an illegality.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Thank you, Trevor. A few things. One is that I think I want to invite His Excellency the President and his Deputy for an induction session on how government works and is run. Two is, of course, he's brought up quite an interesting challenge on passing legislations, and he said we need to pass a law. So I want to challenge him as well. Go ahead and draft the law, and if you wish to engage us as amicus, we are interested, because we also help citizens to draft petitions. We have worked with county assemblies on technical support to develop bills. So we are ready, and in so doing, also to join the quest for full devolution of functions, so that it is not just a county governor's role, but that we see the entire infrastructure of devolution being put in that. Number three is, as county governance watch, and I think you asked moving forward, what do we see? We have engaged with the control of budget and even the Auditor General in terms of we're in conversations around building the capacities of county governments, because you see, there's one thing to say you are not using your development funds, but probably there is a knowledge hiatus. There is a gap in terms of how do we do it, what are we supposed to do, and what exactly are you looking at? Because what we see happening is that the control of budget only comes in at the level of approval of these budgets and fundings. But I think that there needs to be a much more robust conversation around the percentages given to recurrent expenditures and also to development, and also how to boost that development aspect of it so that it is seen to be working. And then, of course, lastly is to strengthen partnerships. Yeah. And this also cuts across even for MCAs. I have seen some MCAs who care very little around what the governors are doing in their wards. And they have gone further to write to UN, County Governance Watch, UNICEF, and several others. Yeah. To just come and look at their wards and then partner and see what they can be able to do. And many counties, many MCAs from counties are really picking up that. So it's basically looking outside the box.
Beyond the executive. Beyond the executive. Final one.
I think three things. Number one, there's a question about expenditure in Nairobi. And first and foremost, we've only received 2 tranches from the national disbursement.
Yes.
You know, the one around August, September, and the other one in October. So counties essentially run on overdrafts. So it's so hard to keep up. And then the procurement process in the county is so tedious. so that by the time you are ready to procure, it's actually 6 months in. By the time they're starting the year, the end of financial year is here. So I think we need to relook at it because we need to be also looking at solutions. Number two, the issues about going to bed with governors, bursaries, affirmative action funds. Trevor, we are employed by Mwananchi. Whatever Mwananchi feels is important to them is what we do. If bursaries is dear to Mwananchi, if those projects that are in Schedule 4, second part, are dear to them, those are the issues that will follow. Because if you don't follow those ones, then you will come to another interview 5 years and they will give you not a very good verdict. Finally, on the issue of devolution. Devolution was a crown jewel in the Constitution. And I think we should be able to have these kinds of conversations. And I'm very happy that you brought this. And I hope that we even make it at least once a week to have a discussion about devolution. Because the serious development that this country is going to take on is through the counties. If we are going to have pending bills, issues in all the 47 counties, then those business people are going to suffer across board. So we need to have this conversation that is going on, that is not stopping. And maybe we need to look at the issue of development funds and finding a way of ring-fencing it. Because if you look at the report from the Control of Budget, at the end of a financial year, 90% of recurrent is actually spent. But when it comes to development, it's about 10%. So we need to find a way to force executives to be able to be spending this money and find a way of making it robust. Because at the end of the day, if this conversation is not ongoing, then there's a problem. And very finally, when I saw my brother here, I thought you were going to talk about Kisii and fights about the governors or Selassie, I don't know, Slab. You know, and I'm happy that this discussion is beyond and is growing up. So that the main issues that are affecting counties are the ones that are being discussed. And I'm happy with your choice of panel. And I hope that you can also tap also other MCAs and bring them to have these kinds of discussions because this is happening. And this is what the next level of this country in terms of development will be happening at the county.
All right. Thank you so much. We avoided that war because it's a court case now, actually. I think Silvanus Osoro has gone to court in regards to the drama that they have between him and the governor. That's the reason why we didn't touch on it. But thank you all for making time this morning. Honorable Chege Mwaura, Secretary General, County Assembly Forum, and also Honorable Boss Maurura, MCA Masimba, UDA Whip in Kisii County, Honorable Grace Bahati, Cheleni MCA in Machakos, Honorable Emily Oginga, nominated MCA in Kisumu, and Kevin Osido, Executive Director, County Governance Watch. And thank you all for all the feedback that you sent in this morning. That leaves it for now. I hope you have a fantastic weekend ahead, but there's still time now to dance a bit. It's Level Up, right? Coming up with Bensu. There's a very interesting list of artists and DJs. Stand by for that. All right?